In a 10, Afton possessed. A long time ago, I made a passing comment that Afton wasn't actually dead. People were mad that I didn't put Springtrap on the original scariest animatronics list, and aside from him being literally so unscary that they had to make a whole new game to compensate, I also argued that since he's just a guy enhanced by robotics, he wasn't an animatronic and instead a cyborg. And in the great terms of Fallout 4, nobody liked that. Even when I cited the fact that even matpat pointed out that Springtrap never dies. But that's aside the point. However, I was in fact proven correct when the story of the man in room 1280 came around to show us that William was unable to die thanks to the spirit of the one you should not have killed. A young boy with an alligator mask in the books who was keeping him alive so that he could suffer for his crimes. And until this day, most people still won't accept that despite it being proven, okay? They take him off life support in the book and he's still kicking after that, okay? So whether this hospital experience actually happens or not, the point of the book was to show us that Afton was possessed and that's how he survived, okay? Someone needs to update the wikis, because they still say that he died as a human. He didn't really die until like the FNAF 6 fire, maybe when he became a sentient code, if we want to consider that dying. In at 9, the Golden Killer. I am absolutely positive that the FNAF universe has plenty of urban legends about these restaurants. I mean, like, how could they not? A place where kids keep going missing that then gets shut down and reopens almost every 5 years. If that's not a cause for urban legends, I don't know what is. Christ, this is one of the most horrifying stories a parent could ever hear about. Like, if anyone so much as looked in our direction wrong as a kid, my father would ban us from returning. It was insane, and I'm honestly surprised that he didn't me. Either way, there must be tales of the Golden Killer that would dress in an animatronic suit and lure children away with the promise of free tickets and pizza. Obviously used as a cautionary tale by parents about the dangers of talking to strangers, but I think they may not realize how close and how serious these stories actually are, especially given that the Pizzaplex, at least when it's open, is still packed full of children despite 9 kids already going missing there. In at 8, Springtrap. Another urban legend from the FNAF universe that's also in the FNAF universe, like it's from the FNAF universe but also inside the FNAF universe, is Springtrap. The whole point of Springtrap was that he was an old animatronic that still worked that they set loose in the Fazbear Fright horror attraction. The attraction that was a replica of the old Freddy Fazbear's Pizza located inside an actual amusement park meant to revive the decades-old urban legends that surrounded the establishment from 30 years ago. Springtrap's whole purpose was to be an urban legend. If we got to see more from like the actual universe, like materials and newspapers, I'm sure that they would have marketed the only working animatronic as horrifying and actually possessed by one of the original victims, all while being unaware that it was actually the killer that they had set loose once more. From a story standpoint, I see why they had to do it like this. It actually like puts stakes back into the series because the killer's out again. But my real question is, why did Henry sell the location, okay? I mean, like, they bought the place to get scraps, right? So why did Henry sell it if he was just planning on burning it down? Like, why risk William getting loose? Why even burn it down when he was already trapped in the room and had been stuck in there for 30 years, okay? It seems painfully stupid in my opinion. Dude, you don't need to sell it, okay? Just let him suffer. And at 7, headlines. The Twitter account of Diamond Zia on June 27, 2020 tweeted out 3 photos with the line of, quote, FNAF will be real in 48 hours. These pictures were of news articles, one from USA Today titled 5 children have gone missing inside Chuck E. Cheese, parents report smells coming ... One from Associated Press called post-hour worker at Chuck E. Cheese reported dead at 27, and a final one from the Something News titled night shift workers at Chuck E. Cheese claim strange movements from animatronics during post hours. However, this title had animatronics spelt incorrectly. It said animictronics. Everyone was freaking out, understandably, and the pictures of the articles, particularly the first one, were shared all across the internet. People were losing their minds, especially because this is around the time where Chuck E. Cheese was announcing their closure. However, people didn't realize that these were just fake. How are they fake, you ask? It's simple. Source code editing. You can change what anything says on a website using like source code inspection, but it will only change for you. Like until you like reload the page, like by editing the source code. You just need to like find the aspect you're looking for, and then once you do, you can change it to whatever you want. So whoever made the original image had found an article about Chuck E. Cheese closing from USA Today, and then changed the title to 5 children going missing, and the same thing with the other articles. Hence why there are only images of the articles and not actual links. It was a hoax that blew up and honestly probably hurt Chuck E. Cheese even more. And at 6, closing. Also the fact that due to COVID, because you know, global pandemic, a load of Chuck E. Cheese locations were closing isn't helping the comparison to FNAF, considering how multiple Chuck E. Cheese locations closed as well, not just the one. Like I said, some people were blaming these closings on missing children and other things, like in the last point, but that's not really the case. They were just starting to lose too much money to keep their restaurants operational, so they just had to close some of them. Did they close a location in Hurricane, Utah, where the games take place? No. But they closed one in Layton, Utah, which is like a 4-hour drive from Hurricane. Hurricane is actually closer to Las Vegas than it is to Layton. So I think we're safe to say that these pizzerias are safe from killing sprees, hopefully. And even rebranding part of their kitchen to Pascali's Pizza and Wings didn't really do them much good. But it helped matpat get a hold of a pizza to test it, to see if the Chuck E. Cheese pizzas were reassembled or if they were just born that way in a food theory. And turns out they're just born that way. Halfway through into number 5, Twitter hoax. The Twitter account of Diamond Zia on June 27, 2020 tweeted out 3 photos with the line of FNAF will be real in 48 hours. These pictures were of news articles. One from the USA Today titled 5 children have gone missing inside Chuck E. Cheese. Parents report smells coming ... One from the Associated Press called post-hour worker at Chuck E. Cheese reported dead at 27. And a final one from Something News titled night shift workers at Chuck E. Cheese's claims strange movements from animatronics during post hours. However, this title had animatronics spelt incorrectly. It said animatronics. Everyone was freaking out at these pictures of the articles, okay, particularly the first one, and they were shared all over the internet, okay? People were losing their minds, especially because this was around the time where Chuck E. Cheese was closing. However, people didn't realize that these were fake, okay? How are they fake, you ask? Simple source code editing. Well, okay, it's simple to me because I know how to do it, but if you don't know, it may seem complicated. But in reality, you can change what anything says on any website, but it will only change for you until you reload the page by editing the source code. All you need to do is like find the aspect that you're looking for after you right click and click inspect. Yeah, like especially on Google Chrome, it's easy. Once you do that, like once you find the aspect, you can change it to whatever you want. You can change pictures, you can change titles, you can do whatever. So whoever made the original image had found an article potentially already about Chuck E. Cheese closing from USA Today and then changed the title to 5 children go missing. And the same thing with the other articles. Hence why there were only images of the articles and not the actual links, okay? It was a hoax that blew up and people actually believed it, and some still do, and something that's related to this restaurant, but it's not, okay? That was all fake, and plus that was 2 years ago, alright? There's no relation between those at all. In at 4, no animatronics. Guys, I cannot stress this enough, there is no actual location, meaning that there won't be any animatronics that you can meet, unless your Uber Eats driver wants to go the extra mile and for some reason has a spare FNAF costume laying in his trunk or in his backpack. I don't really think it's gonna happen, and you know what, if they do have a spare one, that's gonna be questionable. Obviously things can change, like they may have a uniform or something to give to the drivers, but I can pretty much guarantee that that's not going to happen. Okay, especially not like that, okay? If Mr. Beast even doesn't do that with Mr. Beast Burger and it's Mr. Beast, I don't think that they're gonna be doing it for anyone else, okay? Sorry guys, but you won't be meeting any actual animatronics unless some seriously hardcore drivers go all out, or there's some secret ARG elements that Scott plans on including that we have no idea about, okay? But also, that's not me saying that there is an ARG. I don't fully believe that there is, but the appearance of a Freddy Fazbear's delivery service after the community had been told that no non-official business would participate is very sus in my opinion, okay? Scott is a sussy baka, all aboard the sus bus. Plus, it said that the pizza rolls are gonna have game tie-ins. So, unless that's like a name, that's additionally sus. Dude, it's like I'm seeing this delivery service vent all over Skeld. And at 3, therapy. Some of these comments make me really think that there should be a group fund for FNAF fan therapy sessions because, dear lord, I make a lot of jokes, okay? But like, I hope that these comments are jokes or supposed to be funny because, fingers as toppings? You want to watch the bite of 83 or 87? What the actual The comments on our first short about this delivery service, ignore me pronouncing first wrong, are very concerning if anything is supposed to be real. Okay, this is a part of why Scott kept saying that he wasn't going to make a real FNAF. And I think that this is like the best way that he could compromise to make it happen for the people who were good and wanted it, instead of, you know, the people like this. Like, why would he want to make an actual location if people keep commenting stuff like this? Seriously, I feel genuine concern for you if you're being serious about wanting to possess an animatronic. Yeah, be a fan of the series and love the series as much as you want. Don't sacrifice your life to try to make the series real. Okay, that's not a good thing. Look at all the bad things that happened in the series. Plus, possession isn't real, especially in the same way that FNAF's possession works, okay? That's entirely fictional. And besides, there is no actual FNAF restaurant or location for you to go to anyway, so please stop commenting it, at least on our videos, so I don't have to see it. Ignorance is truly bliss. Penultimately, and at number 2, no Mr. Beast. I've seen a load of comments about people saying, why would Mr. Beast do this, or making jokes like Mr. Beast is gonna do a whoever kills 5 kids first gets $1 million video, but Mr. Beast has no affiliation with Virtual Dining Concepts, which is the company making this delivery service possible, okay? Mr. Beast doesn't own it, he doesn't have any stake in it from what I know, he has nothing to do with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Delivery. I don't want there to be any issues that come up because people think that he is affiliated with this, okay? Jimmy has nothing to do with Freddy's. He only has affiliation with Mr. Beast Burger, which was also made possible by Virtual Dining Concepts. Me introducing it like that was just that you know that it was real. The company that made Mr. Beast Burger possible also is making FNAF possible. The two aren't related, except just because the company made both happen. I don't know if that makes you disappointed or happy about it, but there is no connection to Mr. Beast whatsoever unless they end up sponsoring him for a video so that they can like get the word out even more, or so that he can make like a version of the restaurant for a video and invite FNAF tubers or FNAF fans over for a chance to win it in a similar fashion to how he invited people over to win a chocolate factory. But even if that video does happen, it will only be a sponsorship deal and not an actual partnership, okay? It's like just like when YouTubers get sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends, okay? It's just the sponsor. We don't have any stake in Raid, okay? It would only be a sponsorship deal, okay? And the location that he would make wouldn't actually be a restaurant. It would only be used for that video and then it would be dismantled. Possibly even in the same place that he built the chocolate factory, assuming that he's renting like that unit or owns it. And finally, in at number 1, delivery service. I cannot emphasize this enough, okay? I saw a lot of people commenting saying that there's a real location finally, or asking where it is, or why would they do that. It's not that kind of restaurant. It's not a restaurant, it's a delivery service. Just like how you can't actually walk into a Mr. Beast Burger, there will be no physical location for you to visit. The whole point of Virtual Dining Concepts is that existing kitchens have the ability to make these, and they can opt in, turning them into outlets for these recipes. Like when you order Mr. Beast Burger, there is no actual Mr. Beast Burger restaurant. It's something that like a Wendy's or something is like making the food either in their kitchen or in a food truck on their property, but you can't actually like go up to that food truck and order. It will be the same concept for this place, okay, but with places that already serve these kinds of food. As it says on the Virtual Dining Concepts website, quote, "Don't change who you are. We have brands that fit your current kitchen, suppliers, and way of working." So, there is, and most likely will not be, a real Freddy Fazbear's unless Scott intends to make it like a 2-week special location in the future for potential lore or whatever, okay? But there is none at the moment, and there won't be when this launches. You just order this on food delivery apps, okay? No. And at 10, it's real, okay? A lot of people couldn't tell if I was being serious or not in the shorts, okay? And I guarantee you that this is actually real. This isn't something I'm making up, it's not a hoax, it's actually a thing. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is real, or well, is going to be. Kind of. Because of the company that made Mr. Beast Burger possible, called Virtual Dining Concepts, they did announce that they partnered with Scott Cawthon to take the first ever fictional video game setting and turn it into a real life delivery restaurant, okay? Emphasis on the delivery part on that, however, because I cannot stress this enough, there is no actual location that you can walk into. I'm going to be saying this a lot in this video, okay? Because seemingly no matter how many times I say it, nobody gets it. There is no actual location, okay? I leave a pinned comment on the short and nobody reads it. People even replying to that comment that said there was no physical location asking where it was going to be built. Guys, it's really happening, okay? You'll be able to order it, but you can only order it online through food delivery apps, just like how they handle Mr. Beast Burger, okay? I just hope that this stuff is actually seasoned, okay? I may be white, but I do have taste buds. In at 9, Scott Cawthon. Apparently a lot of people think that after Scott retired, Steel Wool ended up getting the copyright to FNAF, but this couldn't be further from the truth. As you can see on the announcement, as well as any image of the logo for this delivery service, it does maintain that FNAF and all of its components are still under the copyright of Scott Cawthon. Virtual Dining Concepts website even says that it partnered with Scott and not anybody else in order to make this delivery service come to life. So yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say about this, okay, but Scott is the only person on the FNAF side, at least as far as we know currently, that is involved in the process. Mr. Beast isn't involved, Steel Wool seemingly isn't involved since they haven't mentioned it at all, since they only make money off Security Breach and Help Wanted. So yeah, okay, Scott is still the copyright owner and owner of the series, and I'm pretty sure that even for the next part of the series it will remain that way. He may not be involved that much, but whoever the series is handed off to won't have the copyright or the ownership. It will just be stuff that is pre-approved by Scott. In at 8, Twitter. There isn't really a lot of new information since we last updated you in the previous short on the subject, the second one, not the first one. However, the restaurant still have an official Twitter account known as @Fazbear'sPizza, and based on their account details, they've actually been planning this since January of last year at least, considering that that's when the account joined. You can also sign up for email and text reminders on their website, FreddyFazbear'sPizza.com, and they've been responding to quite a few people on Twitter, but not me, unfortunately. It's kind of annoying, really. But they also haven't sent out any text reminders since the last video as well. Like, I signed up for text reminders, haven't gotten one, which really makes me believe that this was only meant to kind of course correct since the announcement came early thanks to the tweet that had the leak that blew up. Okay? Virtual Dining Concepts really needed to make sure that their website didn't have the information about upcoming projects available for just anyone to see, especially when the fanbase surrounding the delivery service is as intense as this one. This may have sprung up thanks to people searching for ARG clues in the wake of matpat's last FNAF theory video about the Fazbear Frights books before he released his Please Stop video, which in my mind is the most likely scenario of how this was found, but since the account hasn't tweeted in a week now, I'm pretty sure it was just made public so that they might as well like lean into the fact that we already knew about it. So yeah. And at 7, menu. We don't currently have a proper menu for the Fazbear service yet, but currently what we know is that according to Virtual Dining Concepts website, quote, the easy to execute menu features craveable pizza rolls with a unique twist and game tie-ins that new and current fans will want to order over and over again. Now, whether the unique twist is death or a special topping is one thing, however, I'm pretty sure that we can all guess they'll also be serving pizza with a variety of customizable topping, especially according to their Twitter, since they did ask what our favorite pizza topping was in a tweet. I'm disappointed that there weren't more favorite pizza place jokes in there in those replies. However, based on the comments on our first short on the subject, there are going to be some scarier replies to that tweet as well, because it's Twitter. Luckily, I don't think they'll be adding fingers to the meat add-ons. We can also guess that they'll be serving similar stuff to like a normal Chuck E. Cheese or a pizza place, so soda, chicken as well, because Chica, I'm guessing, mini brownies, and probably a small variety of desserts. They may even have cake, because it's supposed to be a place you can go for your birthday, which I think would make the most sense, but only if the kitchen that ends up taking on this additional menu would also normally make cake. And at 6, no relation. XBlue is a YouTube group that has been working on making multiple FNAF locations real. They've done FNAF 4 and recently seemingly completed a recreation of FNAF 1, despite their channel description saying in progress, but their video saying that it's done. So maybe they're adding the finishing touches right now. The YouTube channel, to my knowledge, has no affiliation with Virtual Dining Concepts or Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Delivery. However, their videos are incredibly cool and interesting, so if you want to see their rendition of a real FNAF, go check them out on YouTube, okay? I'm sure that if you're this deep into the FNAF algorithm, you've already seen it, but I might as well point you in their direction anyway, okay? Go subscribe to them. They're pretty cool. However, they do not have any relation to Virtual Dining Concepts or this delivery service as far as I know, okay? There also is no real location for this delivery service to operate from, again, so their videos have nothing to do with this announcement. Honestly, the announcement seems like it was rushed, again, because we ended up finding out thanks to the website having the information, then everyone started tweeting about it. But we were like, we were 2 days late to the party on that short. by the way. That was a whole other thing that was 2 days before, and I was like, oh, we should probably release a short. And besides, if they were affiliated, wouldn't they have made the FNAF 1 location first instead of second after FNAF 4? Or wouldn't they just have not posted it on YouTube because, you know, NDAs, legal stuff, Scott loving the element of surprise? Yeah, I'd think so too. Halfway through into number 5, Corn Maze. Corn Maze is one of the most stressful games in all of FNAF VR, compared only to the likes of the hallway from that very same DLC. Corn Maze revolves around you walking through a maze made of walls, not corn, for some reason, in search of colored keys. These keys unlock their respectively colored gate and result in you winning. However, Grim Foxy is chasing you and he always knows where you are. The only way to really get him off your tail, pun intended, is to hide behind cardboard cutouts after he notices you. The maze is also filled with clusters of crows that will alert Foxy to your location if stepped on, which will result in him finding you faster, as well as scaring the living hell out of you. This game, in the same vein as the Help Wanted flat mode version, but controlled with a joystick and buttons, would work incredibly well, and you wouldn't have to find all 4 keys to unlock a secret one. You just don't have a secret one, and you're golden. Man, I'm a genius. And at 4, Security Puppet. Ah yes, Security Puppet. One of the 3 mini-games required to play through to completion for the Lore Keeper ending of FNAF 6. And let's be honest, you should always play mini-games through to completion, otherwise it's just mean. The Security Puppet mini-game was pretty simple. Keep the assigned child away from the exit. However, the only catch is that there was no assigned child until the 3rd time booting up the game, where the child will already be outside, thus you failing. We know that this child is Charlie, who goes on to possess the puppet, and this was the only time we've seen a kill from 2 different angles. However, a game kind of like a Where's Waldo kind of thing with security bracelets seems like a wonderful and simple idea, especially when we know what the character is really trying to prevent. Would there be a green bracelet character, or would we only be looking for the green band? I don't know, it would be up to Scott. Also, Scott, or I guess whoever takes over next, please do this. Getting close to the end into number 3, Deliver Pizzas. The mini game that opens FNAF 6 isn't like anything else we've seen. Okay, well, it's kind of like Take Cake, but this time you're throwing pizzas at kids' screaming faces, and honestly, I love that idea. The fantasy of throwing a pizza in the screaming kid's face has been present ever since those little buggers in my old building bounced their basketball off my door and made my dog go absolutely nuts. But even without my secret thoughts, this would still be a fun arcade game, and I'm not letting you fight me on this. The difficulty of the game was already defined even before the real FNAF 6 started, and it was cool. But then throw in added difficulty of it being a full game and you have a whole new experience. At least, I think it would be at least, so can't be sure unless we try. Penultimately, in number 2, Midnight Motorist. Midnight Motorist is another one of those games that you could test in FNAF 6 that just feels right. The game is pretty simple, but it's certainly exactly what we need in an arcade cabinet at a pizzeria. A game for the short attention span of a child. You simply drive around until you run into 3 things, then boom, it's game over. You get tickets based on how far you went, or it's one of those lame ones where you don't get tickets at all because there's no feasible way to calculate that, which would also be kind of understandable. Or you just get 3. You know the ones I'm talking about. Midnight Motorist would make a good arcade game aside from the whole yellow guy mustard man debacle, so cut that part out and you're in the money, baby. Go forth and collect the king's tax of tickets and tokens. And finally, in at number 1, Fruity Maze. Fruity Maze, I think, was the obvious first choice here because while yes, the game does progressively get darker, it doesn't have to. You can stick to the original like level 1 Fruity Maze motif, add a proper goal or objective, and then have a weird FNAF version of a Pac-Man style game. Boom, you're done. Just don't make it depressing and allow the player to continue as long as they can, just like a normal Pac-Man game would work, and you're good. And you're golden. Golden Bonnie, dare I say. And maybe throw in a certain level where it's like the messed up dog, flowers, and blood kind of thing just to make sure it's authentic, because knowing these comments, you'll all be disappointed and even get mad if these things don't turn into something dark and twisted. I don't know about something like new being added to the series in the real world, but like, I don't know if you'd want that to be twisted and disturbing. Like if it was a new arcade game, for example, but something like Fruity Maze, you'd insist on it. So yeah, I know you're all sick, and I love you for it. In at 10, Pizzeria. I don't think it's a secret that the main reason people compare Freddy Fazbear's to Chuck E. Cheese is because it's the same shtick. I think it's pretty obvious. Obvious enough, in fact, that I don't really need to talk about it, but this is going out in like 2 weeks' time, so I needed numbers, okay? I'm literally filming this on the day that Security Breach is supposed to come out. So anything that relates it to Chuck E.'s, if any, since this is one that takes place in a giant mall, and I don't think Chuck E.'s has done that, it won't be on the list, because the game doesn't release for like another 7 hours. But I haven't heard of any other children's pizzerias with animatronics and all like the hoopla of cardboard pizza. I mean, like there may be some overseas, but in the States where this game takes place and where the creator is from, I don't think that there's any competitors to Chuck E. Cheese. The idea of a pizzeria with robot animatronics that sing is pretty unique, so I think that's fairly obvious. Also the name, Freddy, Fazbear, Chuck E. Cheese. And at 9, animatronics. Now, not only are the animatronics just kind of the same, since, you know, they're all anthropomorphized animals, but even the characters seem the same. The inspiration for Chica could be one of many things, but most notably, in this case at least, one of Chucky's friends from the Chuck E. Cheese lineup is called Helen Henny, which would make a lot of sense given the alliteration in Chica's name and the fact that they're both chickens. Helen Henny and Chica the Chicken, I think, are pretty obviously meant to be connected, and while Bonnie and Freddy may not have direct comparisons, I think that, like, the whole, like, it's a pizzeria thing, the animatronics are pretty solid evidence as to why they're the same as well. Plus, Foxy may be in some ways based on the character of Rolf the Wolf from the Rock of Fire Explosion show of his Pizza Place's animatronic band, which is also a part of Chucky's group, as they both have their own stage apart from the other characters, and both animatronics are animals part of the Canidae family, or Canidae family. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but that's just like foxes, wolves, dogs, etc. And at 8, arcade. And while plenty of places have arcades, I mean, like, hell, even my cousin has an arcade, but that's because he's absolutely rolling in it. The main comparison is the whole prize counter thing. Not many places have a prize counter, but it is certainly not exclusive to Chucky's. A bowling alley in my hometown has one, Dave & Buster's has one, the list goes on. I mean, if they really want to generate like a customer base based on the arcade, they usually have a prize counter. But I think that it's the arcade and prize counter in combination with everything else that kind of solidifies it as being a Chuck E. Cheese. Only Chucky's has all 3 of these previous points, and even for me, I haven't gone to a Chuck E.'s in God knows how long, but I can still picture the arcade clear as day, and all I need to do to change that memory into a memory of being at a Freddy Fazbear's is just change the animatronics. I can change them simply enough since it's not really a memory and really a recreation of a memory, like how Rick uploads the virus in the season 3 premiere of Rick and Morty, since he makes a totally fabricated origin story, which we have since learned at least has a little bit of truth to it. So basically it's like that, okay? Take parts of something that I remember and change small things about it, and then boom, I'm in Freddy Fazbear's. Change Chucky to Freddy, and the guy in the costume dancing with the kids is a Bonnie now, and now he's leading kids to the back room where the other animatronics are. Oh no. And at 7, Afton possessed. See how I changed the inflection? This time I put the emphasis on Afton instead of possessed. That's because this time around, Afton is the one doing the possessing instead of the one being possessed. Yes, we originally assumed that Vanny was going to be possessed by Glitchtrap, aka William Afton, aka the coded digital version of Afton's consciousness that possessed a VR video game. Yeah, but it definitely wasn't something that could be proven at the time. But after the release of FNAF Security Breach and the discovery of the therapist tapes at the end, we know that this theory was in fact correct. Vanessa did get possessed by Glitchtrap at the end of FNAF VR, and then Afton used her to get back to his old body. However, now it seems that both versions of Afton are kicking around, assuming that the blob didn't destroy Burntrap, something which we also still don't know, and probably won't know until the DLC comes out, or even maybe the next game, or maybe even a book, hell, maybe even the movie. And it's 666 Custom Night. In the good old days where all we figured was that we were criminals stuck in purgatory, we thought that all the secrets of FNAF could be solved using the game's Custom Night, where you'd set the different characters to specific difficulty levels, and then you'd see if you can make it through. However, one such suggestion, the 666 suggestion, was in fact not the case. By setting the latter 3 animatronics to level 6, it was rumored that the kitchen camera would be unlocked, and then you'd have audio as well as visual for this night. But that turned out to just simply not be the case, because, well, if you look at the game files, there is no visual for the kitchen camera, meaning that no matter what, unless you added a version of it yourself, there would be no way to unlock that camera. And this wasn't the only time we'd end up getting trolled by FNAF 1 Custom Night, since later on the Custom Night having the code would indeed become true. However, that code was 1987, and it would just jump scare you instantly with Golden Freddy, which is literally the worst thing ever. Halfway through into number 5, Arthur Gary Bishop. Arthur Gary Bishop was an American serial killer in 1983, and as a result of a routine police investigation, he confessed to the murders of 5 young boys between 1979 and 1983. Bishop was born in Hinckley, Utah, and was the eldest of 6 brothers. Bishop was raised as a devout Latter-day Saint, Mormon, and was an Eagle Scout and an honors student, which is already suspicious in comparison to Afton, given that Afton was also regarded as intelligent given his talent for animatronics, especially in the 80s, and his passion for business. But not only that, Bishop also operated under an alias. Bishop was arrested for embezzlement in February of 1978 and given a 5-year suspended sentence, but he skipped his parole and fled to Salt Lake City, living under the alias of Roger Downs. Under this alias, Bishop would then kill 5 boys between 1979 and 1983. It's also interesting that multiple key dates in Bishop's life line up closely to releases of FNAF games. On July 14, 1993, he was arrested, and FNAF 4 came out on July 23rd, 9 days after that. Well, not in the same year, but you know what I mean. Bishop's first kill was on October 14, 1979, and Sister Location was released on October 7th. I mean, it's not concrete, but it's certainly interesting. Plus, also he was caught in 1983, the same year that Crying Child was bit. In at 4, Donald Harvey. Harvey belonged to a group of psychos known as the Angels of Mercy who claimed to kill for the benefit of the victim. Harvey was convicted of 37 of his more than 57 suspected murders, and he confessed to as many as 87. When Harvey was hired at the Cincinnati VA Medical Hospital, he managed to collect over 30 pounds of cyanide which he had kept in his home. He also kept diaries and detailed notes on each one of his victims, including how he killed them. That gives me just that's intense William Afton vibes. Like, not for some certain reasons, but the delusion of him thinking that he was doing it for the benefit of the victims or just for any benefit it's horrifying, okay? It's the exact same kind of delusion that I could see William having. And a similar delusion to what he seems to have in the games. In the books, he's not exactly like this from my memory, but the game version certainly seems to be the type, okay? Especially given his appearance in the Foxy Go 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 minigame where he's smiling. Getting close to the end in number 3, Thomas Lee Dillon. Thomas Lee Dillon was a serial sniper found guilty of killing 5 men, again with the 5. Directed by voices in his head, Dillon killed people randomly. According to attending psychiatrists, Dillon's delusions of grandeur spilled over into the reality of his life and the lives of his victims. His victims were killed by a high-powered rifle while they participated in outdoor activities, sometimes hundreds of miles from Dillon's home. Authorities did not link the killings to Dillon until he actually sent a letter to a local paper. After the FBI put together a criminal profile of the killer, a friend of Dillon's actually brought into the attention of the authorities, which in my mind is very close to the story of William Afton. The amount of victims, the authorities only investigating those murders after they got tipped off by a friend of the killer, in Afton's case that being Henry, the delusions or the voices in his head could be him being possessed. But honestly, a whole load of these people are just so much like William, it's terrifying. And ultimately, in at number 2, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, as I'm sure you know, was an American serial killer who killed 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospitals and charitable events as Pogo or Patches the Clown, personas that he had devised. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public services as a clown prior to the discovery of these crimes, but jeez. Gacy committed all of the crimes inside of his ranch house, which is a horrible idea, just like William killing inside of his own pizzeria. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and then dupe them into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. And while this is absolutely disgusting and really makes me sick to my stomach, there are still a few similarities to Afton. Okay, killing in a place related to you. For Gacy, it was his ranch house, and for Afton, it's his business. The target demographic is also the same with young people, although Afton also killed girls, which I don't even want. Ugh. And while you may think that this is a stretch, even FNAF itself made the connection with FNAF AR through the clown springtrap skin. Intentional or not, come on, that's a connection. And finally, in at number 1, Robert Berdella. Robert Berdella is, to me, the seemingly perfect inspiration for William Afton. Not only did this man own his own business called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, where he reportedly sold human skulls, but he also seemingly started his killing spree in 1984. The MO is certainly not the same. Berdella would drug and kidnap men that he met in bars and on the streets, but the same idea of killing people you meet in a restaurant scene is carried over to William. There is no confirmed inspiration for William, hence this list, but there are certainly certainly a decent amount of similarities between these two. In fact, if you combine like all the serial killers we talked about on this list, especially these last four, you'll basically get a real William Afton, and I don't like that, okay? That's horrifying. But again, that was the point of this list, so it was a way for me to talk about FNAF without having to talk about FNAF. Okay, I didn't go into too much detail with these because, well, I'm sure you can guess why, but yeah. Either way, I think that this is a pretty... The similarities are scary, that's all I have to say. In at 10, Brian Wells. This is certainly an interesting case that you may not really think relates to William, but let me explain my thought process. Brian Douglas Wells was an American pizza delivery driver who was killed during a complex bank robbery plot. The plot involved a collar bomb, a scavenger hunt, the robbery itself, and a pizza delivery man. Following an attempt to rob PNC Bank, Wells was surrounded by police. That's when the bomb around his neck ended up detonating, killing him. And while his family denies that he was a part of it, investigators and a federal prosecutor concluded that Wells was a knowing participant in the bank robbery. However, he was told that the bomb was fake, and he did not know that his co-conspirators intended for him to die. Now, I think that it was probably detonated because he got caught and they didn't want him to rat on them, and that is the prevailing theory amongst these people as well, amongst the prosecutor and whatnot. But aside from being a pizza delivery man for Mamma Mia's Pizzeria, what possible connection could he have to Afton? Well, being killed by a device that was supposed to be safe, for one, the spring locking and the collar, being betrayed by your peers, in William's case most likely Henry, and the affinity for complex plans. I feel like this may have been at least a slight source of inspiration, especially since this came up when I searched for pizza place serial killers, because I was hoping that there would be one. That's weird to say. Let's just move on. In at 9, Andrew Cunanan. Andrew Cunanan was born in San Diego, California, and eventually settled in San Francisco's Castro district and socialized with older, wealthy gay men while indulging heavily in illicit substances. It's unclear what set him off, but he began a cross-country killing spree of 5 unknown victims, the last of which was actually fashion designer Gianni Versace. Cunanan killed himself on a Miami boathouse in 1997, and if that didn't set off an alarm, congratulations, you have not been ruined by FNAF yet. However, William Afton also had 5 victims at least, but definitely only had 5 when FNAF 1 and even around FNAF 2 was released. And while FNAF 1 does take place in 1993, many have theorized it to instead take place in 1997, which is unlikely given the minimum wage of the times and the connection to another real person, but nonetheless, it's certainly an interesting case of more possible dates lining up and the same number of victims. You know, a lot of people on this list are actually going to have 5 victims, and it's extremely creepy. And at 8, Nathan Dunlap. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, who was the manager of this Chuck E. Cheese, was tallying receipts in the back room. While she was doing that, Bobby Stevens was scrubbing down the kitchen, and Ben Grant, Colleen O'Connor, and Sylvia Crawwell were all working in the main party area. However, there was someone hiding in the bathroom, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap, who earlier that year had begun working as a cook, but was fired after an argument over his hours. But this time he was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen, then he went into the kitchen where he shot Bobby, although Bobby ended up surviving and was actually a key witness in his case. Then Nathan went to the back room, where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains, but thanks to the security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death. Thanks to matpat and his first game theory on FNAF, this one is fairly well known, hence why it's closer to the top, but if I didn't include it, I feel like everyone in the comments would have asked me why, so there you go. And at 7, Burke and Hare. The Burke and Hare murders were 16 serial killings committed over a period of about 10 months in 1828 in Edinburgh, Scotland. The 2 men who committed these killings, last names Burke and Hare, were doing it because they also sold the corpses to Robert Knox for dissection at his anatomy lectures. There's actually a shortage of corpses in Edinburgh, and thus people actually started grave robbing and selling the corpses rather than selling the possessions, since a loophole in the system only considered it a theft if the body was taken with its clothes. Naked corpses were fine to take though, apparently. They didn't really think that one through. These 2 were killing in the name of science, something that we suspect William was doing as well. However, they actually were, in a messed up way, contributing to the furthering of science, whereas William is only doing it for his own selfish reasons reasons and to become immortal. After Hare was given immunity to confess to the murders so that they could convict Burke, Burke was sentenced to death. Shortly afterwards, his corpse was dissected and his skeleton was displayed at the Anatomical Museum of Edinburgh Medical School, where, as of 2021, it actually still remains. Oh, and by the way, the reason they're known as Burke and Hare was because both of their first names are William. Yeah. So maybe Afton's wife is named something similar. And at 6, Ted Bundy. During an interview with Daco, PJ Haywood, the voice actor for William Afton in sister location FNAF AR and Ultimate Custom Night, said that Scott Cawthon described William as being a charismatic, smooth-talking snake oil salesman, which coincides with book William being able to convince anyone of anything. This is actually very similar to how Ted Bundy had been described. Bundy was regarded as charismatic and handsome, traits that he exploited to win the trust of both his victims and society as a whole. He would typically approach his victims in public places, either feigning a physical impairment such as an injury or impersonating an authority figure, before bludgeoning them until they were unconscious. While he did operate nearly a decade before Afton started his spree, those are merely just like year numbers. But one of the most interesting facts, however, is that in 1975, Bundy was arrested and jailed in Utah for aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. In Utah, where the games and the crimes of Afton take place. Halfway through into number 5, John Wayne Gacy. Clown Springtrap is Springtrap's third skin in FNAF AR and the third skin to be introduced in the Dark Circus event. In addition to looking like a horrifying clown, he carries around a very large red mallet in his left hand. And considering how clowns are one of the most common fears in the world, with more people in the States being scared of clowns than global warming, or even terrorism, I think putting Clown Springtrap on this list is definitely understandable because, you know, John Wayne Gacy. This man, okay, he's like Harley Quinn, but not cute, and basically still meant to be a reference to John Wayne Gacy, at least as I understand it. John Wayne Gacy being a serial killer who used to do kids shows dressed as either Pogo or Patches the Clown. An inspiration that was assumed but not confirmed seemingly until this skin. It's also worth noting that this skin looks a lot like the supernatural version of John Wayne Gacy's ghost, so I feel like that's where the connection comes from. Plus, you know, a clown killer. In at 4, FNAF Remake. For a while, we'd heard rumors of a FNAF remake. One that would be so utterly terrifying that we would forget all about the horrific implications it would have to the lore. But honestly, it was just that. Theories, rumors, speculation, legend. Until the announcement of the Fazbear Fanverse initiative. In that announcement, we were indeed proven, at least somewhat correct, with the lineup containing FNAF Plus, a reimagining of the first Freddy Fazbear game being created by FizzNom, the creator of A Shadow Over Freddy's, Pork Chop's Adventure, and a major contributor to the original Pop Goes fan game. Originally, FizzNom was creating a remake of FNAF 2, known as Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Open Source, later renamed to another FNAF fan game, Open Source, as practice for learning a new game engine. But since the game wasn't really a transformative remake of the original FNAF 2, Scott Cawthon did take the game down, because it was literally basically just FNAF 2. However, he was intrigued with the project and contacted FizzNom about making a original FNAF 1 remake, which now he is. Getting close to the end into number 3, Bunny Man's Urban Legend. Okay, so, you know, I play video games to disconnect from reality. I'm sure some of you do too. When I play like super hot in VR, I know that I can't really do it in real life because I can't catch guns, but I can slow down time. But when scary games like FNAF are all of a sudden connected to real life horrible events, it's not really all that easy to play, and you know what? I hardly played them to begin with. Vanny is a follower of Glitchtrap, okay? You know that. She's the main villain of Security Breach, but players noticed something similar about the game's antagonist. Something connected to something very real from the 70s, the Bunny Man. In Fairfax County, Virginia, back in the late 70s, residents would report sightings of a Bunny Man who would run around and terrorize locals. They say the Bunny Man disappeared in the early 80s, but maybe they just disguised themselves as an animatronic, okay? Maybe the Bunny Man's still out there. You thought that Easter was a good idea? Ha, no, not anymore. Good luck sleeping tonight. Plus, I mean, Security Breach does have a very 80s aesthetic, so maybe this is where Bunny Man went. But ultimately, in at number 2, the Missing Children's Incident. The Missing Children's Incident was an event that occurred in the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, at least from the first game, presumably in 1985. A series of unsolved murders committed by William Afton. In the first game, the incident was mentioned in newspaper clippings, occasionally seen replacing the Rules for Safety sign, normally appearing in the East Hall. The 4 mascots, Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, all also had particularly foul odors and what appeared to be blood and mucus around their eyes and mouth, which concerned parents and legal guardians and decided to akin to reanimated carcasses, since they, quote, noticed what appeared to be blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the mascots, and they didn't check inside them for bodies. The children were never found, somehow, and presumed dead, and the restaurant ended up closing by year's end, which didn't stop them from reopening in Fazbear's Fright, and then with FNAF 6, and then again with the Pizzaplex. So yeah, needless to say, there's a whole load of issues surrounding the brains of the parents in this universe. And finally, in at number 1, the Bite of 87. Was that the Bite of 87? No, Markiplier, it was not. The bite from FNAF 4 was in 1983 and often called the Chomp or the Bite of 83. Okay, the Bite of 87 was an incident that occurred in 1987 at the second Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. It was briefly mentioned by Phone Guy in the first game, and it had us hooked from the get-go. The details of this attack and the identity of the animatronic responsible are really unknown, but it allegedly caused the victim to lose their frontal lobe, you know, the front part of their brain. The victim actually ended up surviving the attack, but the incident contributed to a loss in the company's reputation, understandably, which was one of the numerous incidents that resulted in a major drop in business. But not forever, for some reason. As a result of the incident, the animatronics were no longer allowed to wander around during the day. Instead, management decided to let their free roaming mode be exclusive to night, so as to prevent their servos from locking up, which is not how servos work, but maybe it's how they work in this universe. Some fans think that Foxy caused the bite, others think Freddy, Mangle, some even think that Chica might have done it. However, it's pretty generally accepted that Jeremy from FNAF 2 is the one who got bit. But I propose the possibility, okay, I'm not saying this is true, but it's an idea, that Afton himself is actually the one who got bit, which could have caused him to go even more berserk after the missing children's incident. Since, cause you know, his frontal lobe was removed, he would no longer feel fear, as described by matpat in his FNAF 4's wrong theory. I mean, that theory was wrong for the outcome, but not for the science, so maybe Matt was onto something. And it's at Pirate Ride. Given that this is already in the style of a game in FNAF VR, certainly does help in porting this to an arcade cabinet, but there would be some things that they'd have to change, like turning it into one of those like classic shooter arcade games where the screen scrolls as you fight off bad guys threatening innocent civilians, and it tells you what to shoot and what not to shoot. Yeah, that's the kind of arcade game I see this as, except instead of scrolling sideways, it moves forward like the cart does in the ride in FNAF VR. It could just be a simple aim and shoot kind of thing, but maybe they could add some animatronics sneaking in and throwing some cake or pizza at you that you'd have to shoot to block. This would be in order to end the game early, so that you'd then have to pay more tokens, or just straight up money depending on how the system was run, but based on modern practices I think it would be a token system because it probably would end up making them more money in the long run. And at 9, Fun with Plush Trap. Fun with Plush Trap is a simple game that would operate much like it did in FNAF 4 for the arcade cabinet. Despite having more of a presence in FNAF VR, the simplicity of the controls in FNAF 4 would be exactly how this game operates, just in an arcade cabinet, which would require you to just push a button to get the light to shine, and then you let go of it to turn it off, and allow Plush Trap to move, giving you the 60-second countdown to a jump scare if you fail to stop him before the timer, or if he gets to you before you stop him. It's a simple game with a simple premise, but it would work incredibly well for an arcade machine, and I think plenty of people would play it. And maybe you could have like multiple levels like Donkey Kong style, with various smaller nightmare animatronics like Fun with Nightmare Balloon Boy, Fetch, Mini Arenas, etc. Assuming that Plush Trap isn't a form of Fetch already. And today, Plush Babies. The 2 Plush Baby mini games where you have to look around for the various somehow animated baby plushes before they get to you is an interesting concept that with some tweaking could work for an arcade cabinet. It would require a joystick as the spotlight following the joystick, you just move it around to move the spotlight, but it's something that I think would work kinda well, but it would have to be done right. I don't know exactly what done right would look like. I'm an ideas guy, okay, I'm not a programmer, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be that difficult to work out, I hope. It wouldn't be as detailed or scary as the main minigame in FNAF VR, but it would still be something that would work decently well. It may not be the most popular game at the arcade, but that's why you have multiple levels, including the hard mode one and the DLC one in the pumpkin patch. Plus, that's why it's only number 8, because it would be harder to get done properly. And at 7, Ennard. Costumes don't really have to be elaborate to be scary. Take for example this Ennard cosplay by YouTube channel Skywarped33. The entire endoskeleton spaghetti bits aren't there, but the lights and sounds make it even more frightening than you'd think. The face also opens up up, and I think that we all know how I feel about animatronics who can move their face at will at this point, okay? It's not something that should be allowed. However, even without all the parts and the eyes, this Ennard cosplay is not something I would want to run into in a dark alley, especially not after that goddamn vent repair minigame. That caused me to have some serious issues, okay? It's rough, okay? I used to like spaghetti. Man, like now what am I supposed to do? And at 6, Nightmare Freddy. Nightmare Freddy is one of the most iconic versions of the character, even if there are only 3 games that feature this guy, those being FNAF 4, Ultimate Custom Night, and FNAF ER. However, this Nightmare Freddy cosplay is insane, and in my opinion, would have been our front runner for the Coupe de France cosplay competition that it was for back in 2017. The video was uploaded by YouTube channel Gorgon Geek, and this guy plays the robot thing really well. But as soon as he drops that microphone, he goes into terror mode, and it's certainly something to behold. I would have enjoyed it if he had like the little frettles with him, but the moving mouth is certainly a nice touch, especially with the attempted jump scares they do in the video, because he just goes like ah and stuff. Like imagine if this guy had started twerking though. At one point I thought he was going to. He went to pick up the mic and I thought he was just going to start busting it, but no. I think that would have won them gold though. If you get this out of here. If you had started twerking, my guy, you would have won. I don't know what place you came in, but if you'd twerked, you would have won. Halfway through into number 5, Fetch. Fetch was introduced in the Fazbear Frights books and is a robotic dog made by Fazbear Inc. that gets a little too loving. So much so that it will actually brutally murder the girl you ask to homecoming, even though her dad is a supervillain. Sorry Peter, but at least you won't have to feel bad about sending your dad to prison. Either way, a robotic dog that will kill anything you love is absolutely terrifying and should be taken care of as soon as possible. Like, this is why you spay and neuter your animals, people. That's why The Price is Right would always say that. But in all seriousness, could you imagine if this thing was real? Like if you randomly started getting texts from a robotic dog that followed you home, that instead of bringing you dead birds or squirrels, instead brings you the bloody arm of your crush. That sounds like something the Winchesters would end up fighting after it was manifested by some, like, 7-year-old. Oh, that would, yeah. It's like how they find a body in one of those crime shows, like Bones, and they're like, oh, this robotic dog just found this rotting arm and then put it in my bed. Like, that's like Palant levels of crazy, and if you know, you know. And at 4, Lonely Freddy. Lonely Freddy already in a way has a parallel in our world, kind of. Like that trope where someone becomes your friend and then becomes more like you and then tries taking over your life. I feel like that's a thing, but maybe I dreamt that ages ago and forgot about it, but I mean, it's possible, but also just plain old identity theft is another version of Freddy, okay? Identity theft isn't a joke, Jim. A Lonely Freddy was introduced in the Fazbear Frights books and is basically meant to explain what Psychic Friend Fredbear is, but a robot that steals your body and then traps your consciousness into its original robot body. What the ever-loving hell? Why is that so goddamn terrifying, especially in concept? But what if it was actually a thing? Well, it's easy to say that we would just try to avoid them, but we wouldn't know that they exist. We would just be lonely kids dreaming about having friends and someone who doesn't hurt you when all of a sudden a robot wants to be our friend. It would be vicious and definitely would have gotten me when I was a kid. Hell, it could get me now. Like, I legit wanted a robot friend because they wouldn't end up turning on me or something like that. And then here we go. Here's this. I just wanted someone to play games with. And if those people ended up not being people but instead robots, I would have been fine with it. That would have been fine with me. Except these would have taken over my body, so that would have kind of been a bummer. But that begs the question, when you get put inside the Lonely Freddy, would you then get the ability to take over another person's body, or would you just be trapped in there permanently? Either way, it's terrifying, but I want to know. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, human robots. This is something I'm sure people won't think is scary, okay? Some scary good, maybe, but hey, the fact that there are robots that are actually able to look like humans is terrifying. Like, that's such a scary thing. In the original FNAF novel trilogy, it's revealed that Charlotte, the main protagonist of the books, is in fact one in a series of 4 robots meant to allow her to grow up properly after being killed at an early age. But not only is she a robot, also apparently she's also baby. At least from what I remember reading about the books, Charlotte's robot was also able to look like baby thanks to the pins on her body that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, that is the epitome of horror. Who in their right mind would think of a concept like that? And then, what if it was real? Like, we would all be goners. Like, imagine the fembots from Austin Powers. That's basically this. And then all the down bads would be trying to give it to him, and then they'd get themselves scooped. I'm surprised it didn't happen in the actual novels, since that one guy had his gears turning, if you know what I mean.
And if you do, can you please explain it to me, because I'm not even quite sure what I said there.
Penultimately, in at number 2, the spring locks. The spring lock mechanisms is probably the most intuitive thing that FNAF World's invented. The ability to move robotic parts out of the way enough for a human to fit inside is insane, and while it may be dangerous, we also drive over 100 kilometers per hour in huge metal death boxes, so can we really complain? Yes we can. Because while yes, cars have their faults, they are nothing compared to the ability to be both animatronic and suit. And then, that's an incredible feat of technology. People keep saying that spring locks actually exist in the comments, and I don't think that's true, okay? No one has ever given me a source, and it's not a thing, okay? Yet, these are also terrifying because of the same reasons in game. Someone can dress in it and pretend to be a robot, and then everything can clamp down on you in any second, as it has multiple times before. It can trap you, okay? It could, if it were real, crush you, and do everything that we learn about from the books and the games, okay? It would basically just make your life hell for fun, especially when it can be a robot. And the man who was once inside of it can smile knowing that you and all your friends can't fight off a huge hunk of metal. But also, I would never get into one of those things. Even if there hadn't been an incident, that seems like a final destination moment. I wouldn't do it, even if it's in my contract. If they tell me get in this or you're fired, I quit. God. Or actually, no, I let them fire me so I get a severance package. If they have one. And then I can sue them for wrongful termination. And finally, in number 1, the Illusion sound discs. I used to mention these a lot, at the very least, because these are astounding. If you didn't already know, in the original FNAF novel trilogy, it was revealed that the Twisted One's animatronics used discs that changed how others saw them, basically creating an illusionary appearance using sound emitted from that disc that messed with your brainwaves. However, the mere existence of these discs puts everything we know about the series into question. How do we know that anything is real? FNAF 1 has us hallucinate multiple different things like it's me, along with multiple news clippings and posters. What if that was all the discs? And if it was, what if other things were changed by the discs as well? What does the pizzeria really look like? Do the animatronics have different appearances than what we actually see? Are they more rotten? And given that they were leaking mucus and blood beforehand, I feel like they should have been decommissioned. But if this technology existed, I would have trust issues even more so than I do now. Honestly, this might exist, and we just don't know about it. Disney is probably using it because they're the evil corporation of the world, right? That's a thing. Is that we're never getting sponsored by Disney, but that's fine. And 10 mini arenas. Why are the mini arenas so damn creepy? They're not scary per se, but they literally tear Ballora to pieces, so that's something, at least. The mini arenas are basically the robotic version of those kids, in your neighborhood that are always screaming or causing trouble at all hours of the day. And they go to a nearby school so that you literally always have to deal with them no matter what. Or they run down the street when you knock on their door to see their older brother, and then their family is so damn lazy that you have to take off after him running down the street and after him because his family's not going to do anything, even though it's literally a toddler running down the street in nothing but a diaper at 11 in the morning. And then you catch him in front of your other friend's house, and then you end up having that kid pull your hair, kicking and punching you all the way back to his house. At least he wasn't screaming, because then you might have gotten arrested. Then they don't even thank you. Did I just say all that out loud? Okay, well, my old neighbors were trash, and okay. That's a story for another day, but that's what the mini arenas remind me of, except they can kill me or stuff themselves into my body while I sleep in order to escape their underground storage facility. And I don't think that kid was gonna do that. In at 9, Circus Baby. Let's move on to one of the deadliest animatronics in the game. Baby has a on-screen death count of 2. The first being William's daughter Elizabeth, and then the other being Henry as we see in FNAF World. But it's not just the ability to kill that's crazy, it's the incredibly advanced technology present inside this animatronic that's impressive. The ability to contain a whole child-grabbing claw, and then also a containment chamber for said child is pretty damn impressive, but also the ability to use pins on her body to change her appearance is also pretty nuts. Not to mention all of her other features like ice cream dispensing and balloons inflating at her fingertips. But all of this again is overshadowed by the absolute carnage Baby has the ability to wreak. Dare I say, let there be carnage. And honestly, that's probably just the tip of the iceberg for the animatronic, not even including the Fazbear Frights versions. And I know that this isn't a Minecraft video, but did you know that only 14% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed? You could be watching our videos all the time and not actually know that you're not subscribed. So, if you do like these kinds of videos, hit the subscribe button. It's free, it helps us out a whole lot, and you can always unsubscribe if you want to, okay? It's not like a marriage, okay? We don't get half your stuff if you choose to unsubscribe. Okay, now, on with the video. And it ate the scooper. Now, I know you may be mad and think that this is like a stupid point, but like hear me out, okay? The scooper may seem like a weird but kinda normal thing, at least by FNAF standards at first, but with the blueprint revealing how this actually works, this thing is an incredible piece of technology. It can inject whatever it ends up scooping with Remnant, a molten metal possessed by souls, that is capable of keeping a person alive after removing their insides, as we see with Michael. Replacing it, because, you know, he gets his innards replaced with innards, and then, like, you know, is able to walk around, and then after those robotic parts leave his body, he can still just chill, in essence, making him just a walking case of flesh. Unless it didn't actually remove anything and instead just opened him up and then had the animatronics go around his bones, but that would still require some serious juice to keep alive, and that's pretty damn impressive. But also horrifying, because while he may look more like he's just bruising, if the purple on Michael's skin is actually decay like some suggest, that Remnant injector is actually able to animate a dead corpse, in essence creating zombies, which would then start a zombie apocalypse, and that's been done to death, no pun intended, so you should all understand how bad of an idea that is, okay? Zombie apocalypses generally aren't good, especially animatronic fueled zombie apocalypses created by intense agony possessed metal that gets injected into someone's no-no square. In its 7 nightmare animatronics. While not the epitome of horror, the nightmare animatronics are certainly not the nicest of fellows. Not only that, but they are in fact not real. They're supposed to be in your brain, which makes them even more terrifying if you ask me. Because not only do these like illusions cause horrific visions to anyone who knows about them, they also end up killing a coma patient. Crying Child, as we know, is in the hospital in FNAF 4, making this game just a nightmare. However, getting caught by one of these animatronics causes him so much stress that he actually dies, which is absolutely insane when you look at it like that. These are so scary to him that it gives him a legit heart attack, or just makes his heart stop working entirely, since we know that's what happens instead of brain death at the end of the game, thanks to the flatline at the end, which is horrible and incredibly sad, but also terrifying. And at 6, the Twisted Ones. Well, the Twisted Ones do certainly seem to live up to their name. The Twisted animatronics are these horribly disfigured creatures that get no love from their mother, unlike an ugly duckling. The thing is, these don't grow into swans. Instead, they use another bit of tech that I'll get into later to disguise themselves. They also dig deep into the ground and wait until the middle of the night to crawl out and then take kids who wander away from their mommies. This legit sounds like some urban legend that parents tell their kids to make sure they stay home or get home after dark. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about them. That's the way the news goes. Halfway through into number 5, Buff Helpy. Okay, this may not be a cosplay, but Buff Helpy is probably the most disturbing non-cosplay character I can really include on this list. If you didn't already know, Buff Helpy is a meme that was created on a Daco FNAF meme review video and has ever since been haunting him and the rest of the community. Don't get me wrong, okay? I love Helpy. But this Buff Helpy meme has generated a whole load of Buff FNAF character ideas, and it terrifies me now. There's nowhere is safe from these creations. If you look up any character, you're bound to find a buff version of them at some point. You just need to scroll down enough, okay? It's one of the rules of the internet, okay? Same thing with what happens to Chica. But no matter what, this is just some psychological torment that I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, actually. But I'm talking about it because, like, it's Halloween, and the world is currently my worst enemy, so if I have to look at this thing on a regular basis when I'm writing these goddamn lists, you have to look at it for this one number, okay? One number. That's all I ask. And at 4, Nightmare. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Nightmare is the scariest animatronic from the games, hands down. This guy will get me every time, and it's one of those reasons I just refuse to play FNAF 4. The other is Nightmare Fredbear, but at least I don't have to deal with them in real life, right? They're only a nightmare character created in the mind of a coma patient in a video game, right? Well, guess again. Thanks to Zombunny Creations on Amino Apps, we get both Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear. Ironically, Nightmare Fredbear is played by their twin sister. And I mean, like, it's ironic because, well, Elizabeth Afton is sometimes presumed to be Crying Child's twin sister. Anyway, these absolute hulking costumes are going to make me drop a load of my pants. Like, if I saw this in real life, holy crap. Like, imagine actually living in a house that is at least kind of laid out like the one from FNAF 4. And then your kids want to play a prank on you. My grandparents' house is kind of laid out like this. It's not as simple as just 2 halls on either side of the room. But like, they have the master bedroom does have 2 doors. So theoretically, that's something that can be reenacted there. I don't want to do that. No. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Glitch Trap. We know my issue with Glitch Trap, alright, okay? We know that I just want to watch William Afton burn and then leave him there permanently, hence why I'm wearing the costume. But I want him to actually be in hell and then stay there while we move on with another killer or something else in the series. Please, for God's sake, Scott. I hate this always comes back thing that he's got going on. And despite being dressed as Purple Guy, I want William dead. So, when I saw this frighteningly realistic looking Glitch Trap costume, my nerves hit an all-time high. I think the sheer simplicity of the Glitch Trap suit is certainly something that makes this a creepy costume, since the stitches are very accentuated here. They're very clear on this version. Like, it might be like the higher contrast than like the actual suit in the games, because like you know that they're there, but you can't really tell. But like, either way, this is creepy. Plus, again, it's another version of William Goddamn Afton, who already haunts my nightmares. So what the heck, Zombunny Creations, again, on Twitter this time. Why do you gotta do this to me? Huh? Why? Bro? And ultimately, in at number 2, Twisted Freddy. Holy ever living hell, okay? This is a horrific masterpiece that I could only hope to achieve. This full body Twisted Freddy costume is probably one of the most horrific FNAF costumes I've ever seen. Especially because I believe that the twisted animatronics are probably the scariest version of the animatronics present in the novels, and a solid tie for the scariest animatronics alongside the nightmare ones from FNAF 4. This is some pretty damn expert craftsmanship if you ask me, though, okay? This is a full body suit, and it blows my freaking mind. Like, look at this. It would weigh a ton, and it would definitely need a hander, especially if my clumsy was the one walking around in it, but it straight up looks like if Freddy Krueger were an animatronic. And I mean, I'm not mad about it in the slightest, but like, it's still freaking creepy. So, well done, DeRegular Sauce, who is the Twitter user behind this glorious creation. Well done. And finally, in at number 1, Withered Bonnie. This Withered Bonnie cosplay is probably the scariest damn FNAF cosplay I've ever seen. This is incredible and comes from the YouTube user The Nick of Time. At first, I legitimately thought that this was CGI instead of an actual costume, but lo and behold, it was just an insane costume. Glowing eyes and seemingly actually aluminum parts, and a chest that opens up that you can push it out with your other hand, which is honestly actually a decent scare. Frankly, in the video, I was kind of taken aback when they did that, so in real life, I'm sure that it was results in at least a bit of a jump scare, but this kind of thing always impresses the hell out of me, because like the closest I've come to making a full costume was when I helped someone work on one of theirs. But that's the closest I've gotten. Hey, I made like a lightning bolt for the chest, and I made paper cup, like bracers, that's about it. This is hella impressive to me. I don't understand how people do this. And at 10, Springtrap. Craftix Gaming's YouTube channel features a video of a real Springtrap costume, and honestly, it's terrifying. Springtrap is the main animatronic of FNAF 3, and this costume is freaking nuts. This is a very good costume, and while Springtrap may not be the scariest animatronic, he's not someone I'm gonna want to tussle with. However, I want to talk about what's going on with this character, because my guy, you dressed up as a possessed man who is inhabiting an animatronic, unable to die but still decaying. You are quite literally dressing up as a serial killer. Like in the FNAF world, if you dressed up like this, it'd be like if you dressed up as Ted Bundy in this world. And if you want to be in FNAF that badly, okay, don't dress as the serial killer, is all I'm saying. And I know that's ironic coming from me, okay, given what I'm dressed like at this moment. Do I look like I want to be in Five Nights at Freddy's? Have I made things seem like I want to be in this world? Because if I have, you need to watch more of these videos, okay? Also, I'm dressed up as the purple guy who makes no appearance in the actual FNAF world, okay? There is no actual, okay, there is the actual purple guy, but he doesn't look like this, okay? The purple guy that I am dressed as is not actually a real version of the serial killer in their world, okay? I don't want to be in that world. Those doors aren't it, Chief. They ain't it. No, the doors ruin it for me. And a 9, Scrap Baby. Scrap Baby is a creepy animatronic. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Scrap Baby is by far creepier than the normal baby animatronic, and this costume certainly does it justice. Animatronics are a difficult costume to really make, since we're people, and unfortunately do not have robotic limbs for the most part. Or if we do, we typically try to make it look like a real leg instead of a robot leg. But a Scrap Baby is even more difficult since, you know, it's a scrap animatronic, and it has a giant freaking claw in its hand. Scrap Baby is a very damaged and recycled version of Baby with a realistic reddish-orange kind of bodysuit, light blue stuff, yellow pigtails, and okay, she wears an orange top with red frills, and it's just super damaged. Okay, like this, she's very damaged. Mentally and physically. Yet somehow Instagram user Gaius Bazzani was able to recreate this in an awesome way. So, very well done. And at 8, Vanny. With Vanny being an upcoming villain and already one of the most popular characters in the series, there are bound to be plenty of costumes of her. However, this one from Rojito Uwu on Twitter is probably the most accurate and creepiest one I've seen. Vanny being a reluctant follower does in a way technically make this a glitch trap cosplay as well, but we won't really talk about that because that's not what counts. This costume is probably the most realistic costume on this list because, well, Vanny in the games ended up making her own suit and is just a human inside, whereas like the other characters like Scrap Baby or Springtrap are animatronics as well as sometimes part human, be it soul or another body. And Rojito's costume follows the exact same concept as Vanny, just a person who makes their own suit, which makes this potentially one of the scariest things of all. I mean, technically it's not the same thing because they're not possessed and enticed to make it by the person possessing their brain, but I mean, it's close enough. I mean, they could be possessed for all we know. I don't know. And it's 7, Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame is some of the most important lore and moments in the series, with the original missing children from the first missing children's incident from 1985 getting their souls released, showing that there are multiple ways to deal with what would later be called Remnant, the infusion of metal and soul, or rather metal and extreme emotion, or maybe in Springtrap's case, metal. Get it? Because his human meat is also in the suit. Never mind. Either way, the Happiest Day minigame is not a simple one-shot minigame. There's some build-up to it. It's like the main story of FNAF 3, so seeing those various minigames and glitches come together into a single arcade cabinet would be a beautiful sight. Almost as beautiful as Glamrock Chica. I mean, as my idea for a real FNAF pizzeria, which you should go totally watch, by the way. It's in one of the corners. I don't know which one anymore. And at 6, Claw Machine. This is pretty dark, but you people seem to love that kind of thing. So, what about a claw machine that was designed to be Baby while she was grabbing Elizabeth? Is that too far? Like a claw machine that's built to look like the baby animatronic on the outside with a window on the stomach where the claw would come out. And that's where the claw machine is. I think that would not only be a fun way to make it a FNAF themed claw machine, but it would also be dark as hell, and I love that kind of thing. Plus, it's about a fictional death, so it's not really distasteful. The idea also stands that this is something out of the box for this list, and I wanted to see what you thought about it, rather than just ranting on about the various minigames in the series for 10 minutes. However, it's time to get back to that, so moving on! Halfway through into number 5, Real Pizzeria. Before the release of FNAF 4, Scott Cawthon's website was littered with references to the numbers 8 and 7 in the source code. This caused many fans, and even dear old MatPat, to think that these were references to the year 1987, when the famous frontal lobe bite occurred. However, other fans believed that these were coordinates, so after plugging them into Google Maps somehow, which honestly I don't understand how you would have gone about doing that. Like, do you just like type all the numbers in? Like, I don't know, I tried it and it didn't work. Whatever. After putting them into Google Maps somehow, they found a location that it actually gave. And the location was an actual pizzeria. Obviously, once this got shared, fans of the franchise started harassing the place trying to get answers. And while it was all one big coincidence, someone might have caught on before. Kathy Blockus reviewed the pizzeria saying that the robots kill. And I saw a robot fox killing a kid before in there. Run for your lives out of there. This was left 3 weeks before FNAF 4 was announced, which is when all the 8s and 7s appeared on the website. So while this is incriminating, they also left the place 5 stars on that review where they said that they were watching people get murdered. So obviously they're just a fan of the franchise. And at 4, FNAF 4 Bite. FNAF 4 may be one of the most confusing games in the franchise, with seemingly nobody having solved it to this day unless Scott just hasn't mentioned it. But the Bite of 83, which takes place at the end of this game, makes these scarily like a real FNAF location. Not because something like this has happened before, or at least as far as I can tell from my research, but because this isn't a death that has to do with possessed animatronics or crazy technology, or resurrected purple people being bruised from the inside thanks to an amalgam of animatronic parts. No, this just has to do with an animatronic being given way too much juice. Matpat tackled this exact topic in a theory back from 2017, where he determined that to cause a catastrophic brain failure like we see Crying Child suffer in that bite, each of the 8 teeth that he gets bit with would have had to been applying over 14,000 newtons of force. 14,758 newtons of force to be exact. Which, like I've been saying, is serious overkill for moving an animatronic head. That would require multiple industrial grade pneumatic actuators that you wouldn't be able to fit in the suit, okay? This isn't a spring lock failure, like a lot of people say. This was something that is tangible in this reality, and that's probably even more terrifying than all of the jump scares at once. Getting close to the end in number 3, disturbing desires. Okay, so this is something that, while not directly translating into like the FNAF world or from FNAF to our world, it's a serious issue that I've seen in the comments, okay? So we've made a series of videos about how we could turn a closed Chuck E. Cheese location into a FNAF joint, or even all of them into FNAF joints, but you see, in the comments of those videos, which you should totally go watch by the way, links in the iCard, and then share the videos with Scott because that sounds like a fun project, even if it's just like for a week, please. If Mr. Beast can open a fast food chain, Scott, I'm sure you can make FNAF real. The comments of those videos, okay, are full of various people telling me that they think it would be a great idea to have a real FNAF, because then they could go and die in the restaurant and possess an animatronic. What? Why the absolute hell would you want that? First of all, okay, possession isn't real. That's not a thing in real life. I have yet to see any real evidence about it or anything paranormal, okay? But in addition to that, even going by FNAF rules, you would need to suffer heavily when you die in order to generate the agony that is needed to possess something. Since in FNAF, all possession is actually just a manifestation of your extreme agony grabbing onto something that's nearby, as we learned from Fazbear Frights and Dr. Phineas Taggart. If you're happy that you're in the FNAF restaurant and you're happy that you're dying there so you can possess something, you wouldn't end up possessing something because you wouldn't be in agony. You'd be happy. So, this is just a bad idea overall. Don't do it. And ultimately, in number 2, employee manual. Oh, well, do you think that I'm talking about the FNAF employee manual? Absolutely not. I wish it was. This number is actually much more concerning than that, because a particular image sent people into a frenzy with the idea that Chuck E. Cheese restaurant animatronics are actually gonna hurt you. A post from Twitter user @PabloThinghouse made mention of the restaurant's instruction manual, which is for employees, which included a section that said Chuck E. Cheese himself had facial recognition software that would cause him to come to life and attack any intruders caught on the property after hours. Sound familiar, anyone? With the actual manual in the now hidden or deleted tweet saying, quote, "It is always important that all Chuck E. Cheese night shift employees must wear a spare Chuck E. Cheese costume head to avoid any animatronic facial recognition, because if they spot any humans in the building post hours, they will automatically detect that person as a criminal trying to tamper with objects on the building, and that won't lead to anything good." And Pablo's reaction was probably realistic here, since they said, quote, excuse me? And the fact that this is supposed to be the actual manual makes me sad. However, I looked it up and it's not the case, but this is still kind of freaky. And finally, in at number 1, Nathan Dunlap. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, the manager, was tallying receipts in the back room. While she does that though, Bobby Stevens scrubs down the kitchen, and Sylvia Crawwell, Ben Grant, and Colleen O'Connor all work in cleaning the main area. However, there is someone hiding in the bathrooms, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap. Earlier that year, he had been working there as a cook before getting into an argument over his hours, which resulted in him losing his job. He was looking for revenge. He exited the washroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Then he went into the kitchen, where the bullet entered Bobby's jaw and sent him flying across the room. And then Nathan went to the back, where Margaret opened up the safe before being shot twice. Nathan then filled her bag with $1,500 cash and arcade tokens and keychains. Thanks to the security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death. But Bobby did end up surviving, luckily, and he was actually able to testify at Nathan's trial. I got this theory from matpat in his first ever game theory on FNAF, because he was relating it to the events of the actual series. But the fact that this lines up so well is pretty terrifying. And while it may not be true that it's based off of that, I think those stories are a little too close to just not think about it.